When I was living in New York, I had a kind of turning point where I actually I could have stayed in the States and become an American musician. And I thought, no, I don't want to do that. I'm English, British, my parents, my background. I want to go back to Britain and find out what jazz would mean if it had been generated in Britain, in the British culture. Because I understood, I worked in a black Muslim band in the States, and I really got the roots of jazz as a language. So just coming away from the word jazz for a minute, there was a musical language which I'd gone to interact with and to learn from, and I learned a great deal from it. And I wanted to know what language there would be if there was a similar language in Britain. And as far as I knew, there wasn't really. There was rock and roll, there was the Beatles, and there was all of that. But I was looking for the level of like this self-expression thing where you're actually improvising. What would it sound like? Because I know the Irish, crazy music, wonderful. The whole Celtic thing is just like, wow, isn't it? So what would English music be like if... So I was always interested I always tried to gravitate towards improvisers who were British, who were not slaves to the American language, which is why, I spent so much time with Barbara, and it's why I spent so much time with Phil. Because for me, Phil is, and the players, the musicians that he gathered around him, were exactly what I set out to do when I was 26 or something, 27. These guys are improvising, and it's not American bebop, and there's a local thing about it which belongs almost especially to North London, but it's Canterbury as well,
One of the first sessions that kind of led you to Phil Miller eventually was, although you may not see it like that, was working with Gilgamesh for a radio session. That was a very brief thing, so I don't know how much insight you had into Alan Gowan and his music. What do you remember of the experience?
I remember it was a recording session.
It was a BBC session.
Was it a BBC session? Is that what made the album?
It made the Arriving Twice CD, yeah.
Right, okay. I just remember meeting a bunch of guys who knew what they were doing, and I was just invited to do what I do, and I did it, and I thought it was great. And Steve Cook, I think, was involved as well. Yeah,
there was Phil Lee on guitar,
Phil Lee, yeah.
And Mike Travis on drums.
Yeah. So these were guys that I knew peripherally, apart from Steve, who I'd worked with a lot. That's it. Got on very well with Alan.
In terms of Alan and Phil having this in common, both being British and playing so distinctively British kind of music, and also having the same kind of approach to the balance between improvisation and writing. Perhaps your experience with Gilgamesh was too brief to really experience that, but it seems to me they had this in common, and they later became, prior to Phil working with you, close collaborators, because I think they had sort of that in common.
Alan being a keyboard player, I mean, keyboard players very rarely get to know each other, or to know each other's work or philosophy. It's the nature of piano players, I think. So I didn't know much about Alan.
Yeah.
I recognised, a fellow spirit in the story.
Harry Beckett's Joy Unlimited is one of the albums you played on in the 70s.
Yeah.
So tell me more about Harry and working with him in that particular band.
Oh my God.
Any prior association with him before?
Well, probably through either Don Rendell or Barbara. I found him the most excellent improviser and lovely sound, gorgeous player. Very self-effacing, very humble. I loved playing with him. It was great. Yeah, I thought his approach to improvisation was magical. I loved it. When I was invited to join the Baker-Gurvitz Army, it was John Mitchell, who was my old friend and experimenter and colleague. He was in that band. I don't know why, but he said he can't stand it anymore. Would I like to do the job? And I thought, well, why not? You know, good pay and big audiences. I gave it a try. You know, and it was like a very interesting year, but very stressful. The guys were, if anything, more appalling than any of the jazz musicians I played with. They were, but then again, you know, mental stuff. I got the sack there as well, so I had a bit of a row with Paul Gurvitz.